Dust settled over the ruins like a burial shroud. Daniel Ross wiped blood from his visor and surveyed what remained of the mining complex. 3 days ago, this place had been home to 2,000 workers. Now it was just broken metal and scorched earth. The Draknir had done this. Those massive dragon creatures had swept down from the sky, breathing fire hot enough to melt steel. The coalition forces had pushed them back eventually, but the cost was written in ash across every surface. Daniel's boots crunched over debris as he moved through the wreckage. He was a contractor, not regular military. That meant he got the dirty jobs that actual soldiers wouldn't touch. Today's assignment was simple: clear out any remaining Draknir warriors hiding in the industrial sector. No prisoners, no mercy, just clean kills and move on. His rifle felt heavy in his hands. 5 years he'd been doing this work. 5 years since Earth's corporate wars had taught him that survival meant following orders and keeping your head down. The galaxy wasn't much different from home. Just bigger guns and stranger enemies. "Ross, you copy?" The voice crackled in his earpiece. "Yeah, I'm here," Daniel replied. "Command wants that sector cleared by nightfall. Don't waste time on wounded ones. Just confirm the kill and move on." Daniel didn't respond. He'd heard the same orders 100 times before. The coalition didn't take prisoners from the Draknir sovereignty. Something about honor codes and cultural differences that made capturing them impossible. Easier to just eliminate them and sort out the politics later. He moved deeper into the complex, passing through corridors torn open by plasma fire. The Draknir were terrifying opponents. Each one stood nearly 12 feet tall with scales harder than most armor plating. Their wings could generate enough lift to carry their massive bodies into the sky, and their breath weapon could turn a combat vehicle into molten slag in seconds. Humans were new to this galactic war. Earth had only joined the coalition 15 years ago, and most species still saw humanity as primitive. But humans had one advantage: they adapted fast. What they lacked in natural weapons or advanced technology, they made up for with sheer stubborn determination. Daniel had learned that lesson during the water wars back home. He'd been 22 when his unit got pinned down in the Australian outback by corporate mercenaries. They'd been outnumbered 3-1 with no support coming, but they'd held that position for 6 days through heat, thirst, and constant attacks. Humans didn't know when to quit. Sometimes that was a strength. Sometimes it was just stupidity. He climbed over a collapsed wall into what used to be the primary refinery. The smell hit him first. Burned metal mixed with something organic and wrong. Then he saw the bodies. 3 Draknir warriors lay scattered across the floor, their scales blackened by the coalition's plasma weapons. Daniel moved past them carefully. His scanner showed no active heat signatures, but the Draknir could lower their body temperature to avoid detection. He'd seen a wounded one play dead before, then rip apart an entire squad when they got close. The industrial sector stretched out before him, a maze of machinery and storage tanks. Most of it was destroyed, but some structures still stood, perfect hiding spots for a wounded warrior waiting to ambush unwary soldiers. He switched his rifle to armor-piercing rounds and advanced slowly. Every shadow could hide death. Every sound could be a warning. The Draknir were apex predators on their homeworld, and they brought that killer instinct to every battle. Daniel had seen recordings of their world once. A planet of high mountains and deep valleys where dragon-like creatures soared through crimson skies. They'd been the dominant species for thousands of years before developing space travel. The idea of being prey was foreign to them. That made them dangerous. They fought with the confidence of creatures who'd never known fear. His earpiece crackled again. "Ross, status report. Still clearing the sector. No contacts yet. Pick up the pace. We've got another assault planned for tomorrow and need those refineries checked." Daniel bit back his response. Command didn't care about thoroughness. They just wanted boxes checked on their reports. But rushing through enemy territory was a good way to end up dead. He moved past a row of storage containers, his rifle sweeping each corner. The war had been going on for 8 months now. The coalition wanted the mining rights to this sector. The Draknir sovereignty claimed it was their ancestral territory. Neither side would back down, so young soldiers on both sides died for politicians and profit margins. Daniel had stopped believing in causes during the corporate wars. He fought because it paid well and because sitting still felt wrong after everything he'd seen. But he didn't hate the Draknir. They were just doing their job, same as him. A sound echoed from deeper in the complex. metal scraping against stone. Daniel froze, his finger resting near the trigger. Something was alive in there. Something big. He moved forward, following the sound through the maze of wreckage. His heart rate stayed steady. Fear was natural, but panic got you killed. He'd learned to function through the adrenaline, to think clearly even when death was close. The sound came again. Closer now. A low rumble that he felt in his chest. Daniel rounded a corner and stopped. A Draknir warrior lay trapped beneath a collapsed loading crane. The massive creature's wing was crushed under the metal and dark blood pooled around its body. Its scales were deep blue, almost black, with silver markings that indicated high rank. Some kind of officer or noble, probably. The creature's head turned toward him and their eyes met. Daniel raised his rifle, finger on the trigger. This was the job. Clean kill, move on. Report sector clear. But something made him hesitate. The Draknir warrior's breathing came in shallow rasps. Each breath rattled in its massive chest like stones tumbling in a barrel. Daniel kept his rifle aimed at the creature's head, but his finger stayed off the trigger. The dragon's eyes were golden with vertical slits for pupils. They watched Daniel with an intensity that felt almost human. No fear showed in that gaze. No pleading. Just calm acceptance of what came next. You are the human warrior, the Draknir said in broken coalition standard language. Its voice rumbled like distant thunder. I am called Wrath of the Skyfire clan. I ask for clean death. Make it quick. Daniel's rifle didn't waver. He'd heard stories about Draknir warriors. They valued honor above everything else. Dying well mattered more to them than living poorly. This one wasn't begging for life. It was asking for dignity in death. How long have you been trapped here? Daniel asked. Wrath's head tilted slightly, confusion crossing its reptilian features. 2 sunrises. Why do you speak? Just finish it. Daniel should have pulled the trigger. Orders were clear. But something about this moment felt wrong. He'd killed before, done it plenty of times, but always in combat when the other side was trying to kill him too. This felt different. This felt like execution. His mind flashed back to Earth. 7 years ago, the Australian outback. His unit had been ambushed and scattered. Daniel had taken shrapnel to his leg and couldn't walk. He'd dragged himself into a drainage ditch while enemy fire tore up the ground around him. He'd laid there for hours, bleeding and helpless. A corporate merc had found him eventually. The man had raised his rifle, ready to finish it. But then he'd just looked at Daniel for a long moment, shook his head, and walked away. That mercy had saved Daniel's life. He'd never understood why the merc did it. Now he was on the other side of that moment. I'm going to lower my weapon, Daniel said slowly. Don't try anything stupid. You mock me with false mercy? Wrath's voice held an edge now. Kill me or leave. I will not be your prize or prisoner. Shut up and let me think, Daniel said. He moved closer, keeping his rifle ready but pointed down. The loading crane had crushed Wrath's left wing completely. The limb was twisted at impossible angles, bones jutting through the leather membrane. Blood loss alone should have killed the warrior hours ago. But Draknir were tough. Daniel had seen recordings of them surviving wounds that would kill a human 10 times over. Their scales acted like armor, and their biology was designed for their harsh homeworld. This one was dying, but it was taking a long time about it. Daniel set his rifle down carefully and pulled out his medical kit. Wrath tried to rear back, but the crane held it pinned. What are you doing, human? Probably something really stupid, Daniel said.
He had basic trauma supplies.
Nothing designed for alien biology, but blood loss was blood loss across most species. He pulled out coagulation foam and approached the worst wound. Stop this, Wrath growled. I am your enemy. We are at war. Yeah, I noticed, Daniel said. He sprayed foam into the wound where Wrath's wing met its body. The creature flinched but didn't pull away. But you're also trapped under about 3 tons of metal and not going anywhere. War can wait 5 minutes. The foam expanded, sealing the worst of the bleeding. Daniel worked quickly, treating each wound he could reach. Wrath watched him with those unblinking golden eyes. Confusion clear on its alien features. Why? Wrath asked finally. We killed your people. Burned your colony. Why show mercy? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He finished sealing a gash along Wrath's shoulder before sitting back on his heels. During the wars on Earth, someone showed me mercy when I was bleeding out in a ditch. Never knew why he did it. Maybe he was tired of killing. Maybe he just saw another soldier instead of an enemy. I don't know. This is weakness, Wrath said, but the words lacked conviction. Maybe, Daniel agreed. He pulled out a water container and held it up. You thirsty? Wrath stared at the container like it might explode. You confuse me, human. Your people are known for their brutality in war, for never surrendering, never showing weakness. Yet you offer water to a warrior who would kill you if free. Would you? Daniel asked. Kill me right now if you could? Wrath was quiet for a long moment. I do not know anymore. This act makes no sense to me. Daniel opened the container and held it to Wrath's mouth. The dragon drank slowly, its eyes never leaving Daniel's face. When it finished, Daniel pulled back and checked his scanner. No other coalition forces nearby. Good. He stood and picked up his rifle. Listen carefully. I'm going to report this sector clear. That buys you maybe 12 hours before someone else checks. Your people have scouts watching this planet. If they come looking, they might find you. You would lie to your commanders for me? Wrath's voice held wonder now. This breaks your laws. Probably, Daniel said. He pulled out 2 more medical packs and set them within Wrath's reach. I've broken worse laws for worse reasons. At least this time it might save a life instead of taking one. I do not understand humans, Wrath said quietly. That makes 2 of us, Daniel replied. He turned to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, I hope your people find you. You deserve better than dying alone under a pile of scrap metal. Human, Wrath called out. What is your name? Daniel. Daniel Ross. Daniel Ross, Wrath repeated carefully. The Skyfire clan will remember this. I swear it on my honor and my blood. Daniel nodded once and walked away. He didn't know what that promise meant. Didn't know if it mattered. But as he left the industrial sector behind, something felt different. Lighter somehow. His earpiece crackled. Ross, report. Sector clear, Daniel said. No active contacts. Moving to next checkpoint, the lie came easily. Too easily, maybe. 3 days crawled by like wounded animals. Daniel went through the motions of his job, clearing sectors and filing reports. Nobody questioned his claim about the industrial complex. Nobody cared. The war ground forward like it always did, chewing up lives and spitting out bodies. But something had changed. Daniel noticed it first during a routine patrol. His squad was moving through the eastern perimeter when his scanner picked up Draknir scout ships overhead. Standard procedure was to call in air support and take cover, but the scouts just circled once and flew away. No attack, no hostile action. They just watched. That was weird, muttered Stevens, one of the other contractors. Those scouts usually strafe anything that moves. Daniel said nothing. He watched the sky where the ships had disappeared, a cold knot forming in his stomach. The next day brought more strangeness. A coalition supply convoy got ambushed by Draknir ground forces in the northern valley. 12 warriors hit them hard and fast, but when Daniel's squad arrived as reinforcement, the Draknir pulled back immediately. They'd been winning, had the convoy pinned down, then they just left. The convoy commander was baffled. I've never seen them retreat like that. They fight to the death usually. What spooked them? Daniel had no answer, but he noticed how the Draknir warriors had looked directly at him before withdrawing, like they'd been searching for something specific. By the 4th day, coalition intelligence was losing their minds. Draknir attack patterns had shifted dramatically in specific sectors. They were avoiding combat wherever Daniel's unit operated. Other fronts saw intense fighting, but anywhere Daniel went became quiet. It's like they're tracking someone, the intelligence officer said during the briefing. But that's impossible. They don't have access to our personnel databases. Daniel kept his mouth shut. He couldn't shake the memory of Wrath's final words. The Skyfire clan will remember this. What did that mean? How could sparing one wounded warrior change enemy behavior across an entire war zone? That night he couldn't sleep. He lay in his bunk staring at the ceiling while other soldiers snored around him. His decision in that industrial complex haunted him. Not with regret exactly, but with uncertainty. He'd acted on instinct, on some half-remembered lesson about mercy and honor. Now it felt like he'd pulled a thread that was unraveling something much larger. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away in Draknir territory, Wrath stood before the clan council. His wing had been repaired as much as possible, but he would never fly as well as before. The injury marked him permanently, yet he stood tall, his bearing proud as he addressed the 12 elders. The humans showed me mercy when I was helpless, Wrath said. He lowered his weapon. He treated my wounds. He gave me water and lied to his commander so I might be rescued. This was not tactical. It was not strategic. It was simple compassion. Elder Kira, oldest of the council, leaned forward. Her scales were pale with age, but her eyes remained sharp. You understand what you ask? The old law has not been invoked in 3 generations. I understand perfectly, Wrath replied. A warrior showed mercy to a Draknir at their most vulnerable moment. By the old law, that warrior is now bonded to our bloodline. His life is sacred to us. We are honor-bound to protect him. Another elder, Thorn, slammed his tail against the stone floor. He is an enemy combatant. His people kill our warriors daily. You would have us protect someone who fights against us? The old law makes no exceptions, Wrath said quietly. Honor is honor. Debt is debt. Without these things, we are just beasts pretending to be civilized. The council erupted into argument. Some agreed with Wrath, others called him a fool. But Elder Kira raised her hand for silence. The old law exists for a reason, she said. It reminds us that honor transcends convenience, that our word means something even when it costs us dearly. Wrath is correct. The human Daniel Ross is now under the protection of the Skyfire clan. But how? Asked another elder. We cannot simply stop fighting the war. We fight as ordered, Kira said. But we do not harm Daniel Ross. We do not allow others to harm him if we can prevent it. We watch, we wait, we protect. This is our burden and our honor. Thorn shook his massive head. This will complicate everything. Honor often does, Kira replied. The council reached its decision. Within hours, every Draknir warrior in the sector received the same order. Daniel Ross was marked. His description was distributed. His image was shared. Any warrior who encountered him was to disengage and report his location. Any attack on him was to be prevented if possible. It was unprecedented. It was complicated. It was utterly binding. Back at the Coalition base, Daniel finally fell into restless sleep. He dreamed of golden eyes and broken wings, of promises made in blood and words he didn't understand. When he woke, nothing had changed. He pulled on his gear, checked his weapons, and prepared for another day of war. But as he stepped outside, he saw them. High above, circling in the pre-dawn light, Draknir scouts. Dozens of them. Just watching. Just waiting. Stephen saw them too. What the hell are they doing? Daniel watched the distant shapes and felt that knot in his stomach tighten. I don't know, but that was a lie. Deep down, he knew exactly what was happening. He just didn't know what it meant, or what it would cost. The war was about to get very complicated, and it was all because he'd chosen mercy over orders in a dusty industrial complex. One decision, one moment of compassion. The consequences were spreading like ripples in water, touching things he couldn't see or predict. Daniel shouldered his rifle and headed for the briefing room. Above him, the dragons circled and watched. They would keep watching, because honor demanded it. Because one human had shown mercy when he could have shown death. The old law was awakening after sleeping for generations, and neither side understood what that would mean. 7 days after Daniel spared Wrath, Coalition Command planned their biggest offensive yet. They'd identified a major Draknir stronghold in the mountain range 20 kilometers north. Taking it would break the enemy's supply lines and potentially end the war in this sector. Daniel's unit got assigned to the vanguard. First wave. Highest casualties. Standard procedure for contractors and expendables. He checked his gear methodically while the transport ship rattled through atmospheric entry. Beside him, Stevens nervously adjusted his helmet. You ever get the feeling we're walking into something bad? Stevens asked. Every single time, Daniel replied. That's what keeps you alive. The moment you stop being scared is the moment you get careless. The transport bay doors opened to reveal the drop zone. Rocky terrain stretched out below, peppered with craters from preliminary bombardment. Smoke rose from a dozen fires. It looked like hell rendered in stone and ash. 30 seconds, the pilot called out. Daniel stood and gripped the overhead rail. Around him, 40 other soldiers did the same. Some were veterans like him. Others were fresh recruits who'd never seen real combat. By tomorrow, half of them would be dead. That was the math of war. Cold and simple. The transport dropped them fast and hard. Daniel hit the ground running, rifle up and scanning for threats. The rest of his squad fanned out around him, forming a loose skirmish line. 3 more transports landed nearby, disgorging more soldiers. Advance to the ridgeline, the squad leader ordered. Watch for ambush positions. They moved forward across the broken ground. Daniel's instincts screamed at him. Something was wrong. The bombardment should have stirred up the Draknir defenders. But the mountain ahead was quiet. Too quiet. I don't like this, Stevens muttered. Nobody does, Daniel said. Keep moving. They reached the first ridge and took cover behind rocks. The mountain stronghold loomed ahead, its caves and fortifications carved into the stone. Still no movement. No defensive fire, nothing. The squad leader called for a status check. All units were in position. The main assault force was 3 minutes behind them. Everything was proceeding according to plan. That was when Daniel saw the first glint of light off metal. High above on the peaks surrounding them, his blood went cold. "It's a trap!" he shouted. "Fall back!" The mountains exploded with enemy fire. Draknir warriors poured out of hidden positions on all sides. They'd let the coalition forces walk right into a kill box. Plasma fire cut through the air like burning rain. 3 soldiers near Daniel simply ceased to exist, vaporized by direct hits. "Return fire," someone screamed. But there was nowhere to return fire to. The Draknir had the high ground, superior numbers, and perfect positioning. The coalition soldiers were caught in the open with minimal cover. It was a slaughter. Daniel dove behind a boulder as plasma scorched the air where he'd been standing. His rifle felt useless. You couldn't shoot what you couldn't see, and the Draknir were using the terrain perfectly. "We need air support," the squad leader yelled into his comm. "We're getting torn apart out here." "Orbital strikes inbound," Command replied. "Clear the area if you can. Impact in 2 minutes." Daniel's stomach dropped. Orbital strikes meant they were being written off. Command would rather kill everyone in the kill zone than let the Draknir win. Friendly fire wasn't friendly, but it was effective. Stevens crawled up beside him, blood running from a gash on his forehead. "We can't outrun orbital strikes." "I know," Daniel said. He looked around desperately. Maybe 15 soldiers still alive out of 40. The Draknir fire was intensifying. They were being methodical, picking off survivors one by one. Daniel's mind raced through options. All of them ended badly. They couldn't retreat fast enough, couldn't call off the strike, couldn't fight their way out. This was it. This was how it ended. Then the sky changed. It started as shadows, dozens of them, then hundreds. Draknir warriors descending from the clouds like judgment itself. But they weren't attacking. They were forming a barrier between Daniel and the hostile forces. The enemy fire stopped abruptly. Confusion rippled through both sides. Draknir warriors were protecting human soldiers. That wasn't possible. That violated every rule of war. A massive shape landed directly in front of Daniel, wings spread wide. The creature's scales were deep blue marked with silver. Daniel recognized those markings, Wrath. "Daniel Ross," Wrath's voice rumbled. "You are in danger. This is unacceptable. What are you doing?" Daniel stared at the dragon warrior. "We're enemies." "You are under the protection of the Skyfire clan," Wrath said. "That supersedes all other considerations." More Draknir landed around them, forming a protective circle around Daniel and the surviving humans. The hostile warriors on the mountains hesitated, clearly receiving orders and countermands as their own people shielded the enemy. "Orbital strike in 60 seconds, Daniel's comm announced cheerfully. "Your command has called destruction from the sky," Wrath said. "We will shield you." "You'll die," Daniel said. "The blast will kill everything in a half-kilometer radius." "Then we die with honor," Wrath replied. "The old law is clear. Your life is sacred to us." Daniel looked around wildly. Dozens of Draknir warriors stood in protective formation, their wings spread to create a living barrier. They were willing to die. All of them. Because he'd shown mercy to one wounded soldier. "This is insane," Stevens whispered. 30 seconds, the comm announced. Daniel looked up at Wrath. The dragon warrior met his gaze with those golden eyes, calm and certain. No regret, no fear, just absolute conviction. Above them, the sky began to burn. The orbital strike was coming down. Plasma lances designed to turn mountains into glass. And these warriors were going to stand between that fire and one human soldier they'd never met. Because honor demanded, and because mercy had created a debt, deeper than war. Daniel closed his eyes and waited for the end. Then the fire came down like the wrath of gods, and the world turned white. Daniel woke to the smell of burned scales and ozone. His ears rang like church bells. Everything hurt. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain lanced through his ribs. "Don't move, human." A Draknir voice, not Wrath's. "You are injured." Daniel's vision cleared slowly. He was lying in a shallow crater. Around him, Draknir warriors tended to their own wounded. Their scales were blackened and cracked from the orbital strike. Some weren't moving at all, but they'd survived. Somehow, impossibly, they'd survived, Wrath. Daniel managed to croak. I live. Wrath appeared above him, one wing hanging at an odd angle. As do you. The Skyfire clan kept its promise. You're all crazy, Daniel said. He looked around at the devastation. You could have died. Should have died. Yes, Wrath agreed simply. But honor matters more than survival. Coalition troops arrived within the hour. They came in force, weapons ready, expecting to find enemy combatants. Instead, they found Daniel and 12 other surviving humans being treated by Draknir warriors who should have been enemies. The scene descended into chaos. Officers shouted contradictory orders. Soldiers aimed weapons but didn't fire, confused by what they were seeing. The Draknir made no hostile moves, just maintained their protective positions around the humans. Finally, a colonel named Pierce pushed through the crowd. He stared at the scene with the expression of a man whose entire understanding of reality had just been questioned. Someone want to explain what in the hell is going on here? Pierce demanded. Wrath stepped forward. We protected those under our honor debt. Per the old law of our people, no offense was intended to the coalition forces. Honor debt? Pierce looked at Daniel. Ross, what is this creature talking about? Daniel tried to stand. Pain made him gasp, but he managed to get upright with Stevens supporting him. I showed mercy to a wounded Draknir warrior 8 days ago, sir. Apparently that triggered some kind of cultural protocol. You showed mercy to an enemy combatant? Pierce's voice went very quiet. That was more dangerous than shouting. You were ordered to eliminate all hostile contacts. Yes, sir, Daniel said. I disobeyed orders. The colonel's face went red. You're under arrest, Ross. Aiding the enemy, disobeying direct orders, compromising military operations. I'll see you court-martialed and imprisoned for 20 years. With respect, sir, Stevens spoke up. Ross just saved all our lives. Those warriors took orbital fire to protect us. Whatever he did, it worked in our favor. That's not how military law works, soldier, Pierce snapped. But uncertainty flickered in his eyes. The situation was unprecedented. Nothing in the Coalition military handbook covered enemy combatants sacrificing themselves to protect your forces. The Draknir warriors withdrew slowly, backing away but keeping their eyes on Daniel. Wrath was the last to leave. Daniel Ross, he said formally, the Skyfire clan will maintain watch over you. No harm will come to you while we have breath. Then they were gone, lifting into the sky on damaged wings. The Coalition soldiers watched them go in stunned silence. Daniel was taken back to base in restraints. They put him in a detention cell normally used for prisoners awaiting trial. The walls were gray metal. No windows, just a cot and a toilet. He'd been in worse places, but the uncertainty gnawed at him. Days passed. Interrogators came and went, asking the same questions in different ways. What was his relationship with the Draknir? Was he a traitor? Had he been turned against the Coalition? Daniel told the truth repeatedly, but they didn't want to believe something so simple. Meanwhile, outside his cell, the situation escalated. The Draknir sovereignty sent formal communications demanding Daniel's protection be recognized. They invoked ancient treaties and laws the Coalition had never heard of. When Coalition Command refused to acknowledge the claims, 3 Draknir battle groups took up position directly above the military base. They didn't attack, didn't make threats, just circled endlessly, a constant reminder of their presence. Any Coalition ship that tried to leave the atmosphere got escorted by Draknir fighters. Not hostile. Just watching, the media caught wind of the story. Suddenly, Daniel's face was on every news feed across Coalition space. Human contractor creates interstellar incident. Warrior protects enemy, enemy protects warrior. Dragon honor debt threatens peace talks. The political fallout was enormous. Some saw Daniel as a hero who'd found a path to understanding. Others called him a traitor who'd compromised military operations. Everyone had an opinion. Nobody asked what he actually wanted. On the 7th day of his detention, 2 men in expensive suits visited his cell. Government officials, not military. They spoke in careful, measured tones about diplomatic solutions and strategic opportunities. You've become valuable, Ross, one of them said. The Draknir are obsessed with this honor debt. We could use that. You could be our leverage in negotiations. I'm not a weapon, Daniel said. Everyone's a weapon if used correctly, the official replied. After they left, Daniel sat on his cot and stared at the wall. He'd shown mercy to 1 wounded warrior. One simple act of compassion. Now it had spiraled into an interstellar incident that could change the course of the war. He thought about Wrath standing in front of him as orbital fire rained down. The absolute certainty in those golden eyes. The willingness to die for a promise made to someone who'd been an enemy hours before. Humans weren't used to that kind of honor. Earth's wars had been fought for profit and resources. Loyalty was something you bought with paychecks and threatened with prison time. The idea of honor transcending self-interest felt alien, but maybe that was the problem. Maybe humanity needed to remember that some things mattered more than survival, more than profit, more than following orders. Daniel closed his eyes and tried to sleep. Outside his cell, the dragons circled endlessly, waiting, watching, protecting a man they'd never met because honor demanded it. The summit took place on a neutral station orbiting between Coalition and Draknir space. Daniel was brought from his cell in chains like a criminal. He sat in a conference room designed for diplomacy, surrounded by officials who treated him like either a terrorist or a miracle, depending on their agenda. Across the table sat representatives of the Draknir sovereignty. Wrath was among them, his wings now fully healed. Their eyes met briefly. The dragon warrior nodded once, a gesture of recognition and respect. "Let's be clear about why we're here," began Ambassador Chen from Coalition Diplomatic Corps. "This situation is untenable. We have enemy forces protecting one of our contractors. It's creating chaos across the entire war effort." Elder Kira spoke for the Draknir. "We are here because a human showed mercy when he could have shown death. The old law is binding. Daniel Ross is under our protection. This is not negotiable." "Then explain your old law," Chen demanded. "Help us understand what we're dealing with." Kira's scales rustled as she settled into her seat. 3,000 years ago, our people were barbaric. We fought clan against clan, burning and killing without honor. Then the First Council established the old law. It stated that any warrior who shows mercy to a helpless Draknir has demonstrated the highest form of honor. That warrior and their bloodline become sacred to us, protected, cherished. "That's ancient history," Chen said. "Surely it doesn't apply to modern warfare." "Honor does not age," Kira replied. "It does not bend to convenience. Without honor, we are nothing." A coalition general slammed his hand on the table. "Your honor is costing lives on both sides. This war needs to end, not get more complicated." "Then perhaps we should ask why we are at war," Wrath said quietly. All eyes turned to him. "What are we fighting for? What great principle demands our soldiers die?" The room went silent. Finally, a nervous-looking bureaucrat cleared his throat. "The mining rights to the Talus sector. The Coalition requires the rare minerals found there for faster-than-light drive production. And we claim it as ancestral territory," a Draknir representative added. "Our ancestors hunted those mountains for generations before your Coalition even existed. So we're killing each other over rocks and history," Daniel said. Everyone turned to look at him. He hadn't spoken since entering the room. "That's what this comes down to? Not survival. Not defense. Just who gets to dig holes in the ground." "It's more complicated than that," Chen started. "Is it?" Daniel asked. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks pretty simple. You want minerals. They want respect for their history. Meanwhile, soldiers on both sides are dying because neither government will admit they might be wrong." "Watch your tone, Ross," the general warned. "You're already facing charges, then add more," Daniel said. "I'm done caring. I showed mercy to a wounded warrior because it was the right thing to do. Not because of politics, not because of strategy, just because he deserved dignity in what I thought would be his last moments. And you know what I learned?" He looked around the table at all the powerful people who controlled the fates of millions. "I learned that we're all just people. Human, Draknir, whatever. We all bleed. We all feel pain. We all understand honor and mercy even if we express it differently. The only thing that makes us enemies is the stories we tell ourselves about why we need to fight." Wrath stood slowly. "The human speaks truth. I have fought Coalition forces for 8 months. I have killed your soldiers, and they have killed mine. All for minerals that will be exhausted in 20 years and pride that costs us everything meaningful." "You suggest what exactly?" Chen asked. "That we just stop fighting?" "I suggest we start talking," Wrath said. "As Daniel Ross showed mercy to me, perhaps our governments can show wisdom to our people." Over the next 6 hours, something remarkable happened. With Daniel and Wrath present as living proof that understanding was possible, negotiations actually progressed. The Draknir agreed to share mining rights in exchange for coalition recognition of certain territories as cultural heritage sites. Small compromises built into larger agreements. It wasn't perfect. Both sides gave up things they'd sworn were non-negotiable. But slowly the framework for peace emerged. Daniel was released from custody without charges. The coalition couldn't prosecute him without undermining the peace process. He became a liaison between human and Draknir forces, helping smooth the transition from war to cooperation. 6 months later, Daniel stood on a rebuilt mining colony on Talos 9. The complex now employed both humans and Draknir workers. They still didn't always understand each other. Cultural differences created friction, but they were learning. Wrath landed beside him, wings folded neatly. Strange, is it not? We were enemies. Now we build together. Yeah, Daniel said. Strange doesn't begin to cover it. The Skyfire clan maintains honor guard for you still, Wrath said. Though now it is ceremonial rather than protective. Does this bother you? Daniel looked up at the sky where several Draknir warriors circled lazily. At first it did. Felt like being watched constantly. But I'm getting used to it. Besides, it reminds everyone that individuals can make a difference. You changed the course of a war with one act of mercy, Wrath said. That is worthy of songs. I just did what felt right, Daniel replied. Anyone could have done the same. But they did not, Wrath said. You did. That is what matters. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching mixed patrols of human and Draknir ships cross the sky. The war had ended. The healing had begun, not because of grand strategies or political maneuvering, but because one human contractor had chosen compassion over orders. Daniel thought about that moment in the industrial complex. The weight of his rifle, the choice he'd made, how easily he could have pulled the trigger and moved on. How different everything would be if he had. Thank you, Wrath said quietly. For what? For showing me that strength and mercy are not opposites, Wrath said. That true honor lies in choosing compassion when you have the power to destroy. Daniel smiled. You showed me the same thing. Your people were willing to die to protect one human. That's a kind of honor my species forgot somewhere along the way. Above them, dragons and human ships flew together, a sight that would have been impossible a year ago. Proof that understanding could bridge any divide if you were brave enough to take the first step. The sky filled with dragons, but they no longer brought war. They brought hope.